We can hardly believe that the day is finally here when we get to stand before our friends and family and vow to spend the rest of our lives together as husband and wife.
We are excited for this incredible blessing and cannot wait to take our final steps toward this moment. But first, we want to pause and reflect on the journey each one of us has been on.
As we look back together, we're sure that one thing will be totally evident.
It is only by the grace of God that we are about to stand before you today.
As many of you remember, Greg started his life with what many still consider to be a miracle. After having been born prematurely with multiple health problems, he required extensive care, and at times it seemed as though Ben and Leanie could face the possibility of giving their new son back to the Lord. But thankfully, God had a different plan and heard the many prayers of many people who loved him and saw fit not only to spare Greg's life, but to miraculously heal him in ways the doctors could not explain. Perhaps it was due to this rough start that Greg turned out to be a very quiet, cheerful, loving, and empathetic child. He would hardly ever fuss, and even while Big Brother Ben would frequently fulfill his brotherly duties of harassment, Greg would take it in stride with a spirit of meekness. Like many young boys, Greg would spend hours playing with building blocks and would devise elaborate superhero costumes so he could live in his own little world. He had an extremely creative and active mind for a child and would constantly gravitate towards anything that would allow him to unleash his imagination. He was a likable kid, a great student, and was blessed with many talents, lots of friends, and a wonderful, hard-working family.
Anyone who knew Lindsay as a child would wholeheartedly agree that she was a natural-born leader. As the oldest of three, Lindsay found herself enjoying her role as the only daughter, sometimes believing she was the second mother. Family members remarked that if they could just get her energy channeled in the right direction, this girl would be dynamite. Driven by her love for people, Lindsay was never afraid to just walk up to a stranger and begin a conversation. Some people would call it the gift of gab, and others would just call her a people person. But there's no denying that from a very young age, Lindsay loved being social, being in the spotlight, competing, and just enjoying time with family and friends filled Lindsay's joyful childhood and set her on a path towards an incredible journey.
In high school, while Greg's outward appearance may have remained cheerful and happy-go-lucky, on the inside, like many teens, he was waging a battle for acceptance that would inevitably lead him to seek fulfillment in the fleeting pleasures of the world. Over the course of a few short years, a childhood that had been grounded by biblical principles was being replaced by the thrill of a good party on a Friday or Saturday night. Ironically, this pursuit of the world's idea of fun robbed him of the intrinsic contentment and joy he always effortlessly demonstrated to those around him. Like many teens that grow up in Christian homes and attend youth groups, Greg knew how to put on his Sunday face without ever bothering to crack a Bible. This unspoken rebellion against God's will started small and stretched for years. Mixed feelings of guilt and excitement dulled his ability to sense what the Lord truly wanted for his life. A life of consistent sin led to depression, and that depression led to despair. Thankfully, God intervened, and through a series of incredibly difficult and painful events, he not only changed Greg's life, but also the lives of everyone around him that knew and loved him. Miracles are not always appreciated or understood when they occur, but I can tell you that God worked a miracle in Greg's heart, and finally, after years of resistance, a humble spirit emerged, and a prodigal son returned home to his father.
While Lindsay's happy and energetic disposition continued to blossom as Lindsay aged, junior high was an incredibly difficult time. Difficulties with friends and with boys led to a lot of trouble at home, and even a time of complete rejection of the faith that her parents had raised her in. This time of rejection was one marked by an uncharacteristic depression, and though no one looking on would have suspected, it was even a time marked by suicidal thoughts. On Lindsay's 13th birthday, the Lord intervened and in the midst of her despair, he spoke to her heart, reminding her of the truths that she had heard her whole life. God loves her. He died for her. He deserves to have a relationship with her, and has initiated this by having Christ pay the penalty for sins on the cross. The question was, would she accept this truth by surrendering her life, or would she continue to call the shots? It was in her bedroom on the night of her 13th birthday that she fell on her face before God and surrendered her all.
While it would be a lie to say that because of the Lord's work in our lives, everything has been perfect, it is true that as we have sought to honor the Lord, He has brought some amazing blessings into our lives. Even though we grew up in the same community, the difference in age meant we really didn't interact with each other. Through MySpace and Facebook, we started to get to know each other, but it wasn't until we spent time together over the breaks that our friendship began to form.
When Lindsay came home for the summer of 2008, we spent a lot of time together. As a result, we became interested in each other, and by the end of summer, our interest had blossomed into love. While this love was tested by hundreds of miles and months apart, the Lord graciously preserved it for 2 years.
In September of 2009, Greg flew out to Chicago to visit me. While this was a fairly frequent occurrence, this time he had a special question to ask. By this point, it was clear to both of us that God had brought an incredible person into our lives, and that we wanted to spend forever demonstrating our love for the other. So, at the beach on the Chicago lakefront, Greg got down on one knee and asked me to marry him.
While we both look at each other and say, "Who would have thought?" we know that our story has been graciously written by our wonderful God. So today, we honor the love He has blessed us with by choosing to become husband and wife.
It is our desire that the Lord is weaving our individual lives together so that we can bring Him more glory as we seek to make Him the center of our marriage and the one we serve with our life together.